Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to have you back today. And I'm really going to have fun today because I have a guest with me who's going to tell me like it really is, Art Wilson. And I'm not going to tell you too much about him because I want him to tell you. Okay. But let's just say he can be called the author of chaos. Now, tell me about that. All right. And I'm going to ask him a little bit about his background. I want to get in his own words. And then we're going to have a nice open conversation about really how you overcome adversity and how you move forward from it. So welcome, Art.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Now, now you've just recently written a book, or you're going to write a book. I know you recently wrote a book, right? Correct.
I've not, no. I recently did a TEDx talk.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was what is living through. What was the name of that talk? Living through chaos.
Excellence at the Edge of Chaos.
Ah, okay, just right on the edge. Not jumping into the full blown thing. All right.
Yeah.
Well, obviously that didn't come out of nowhere. Okay, so share with the audience a little bit about just who you are, very briefly, and how you came to be who you are. That's as much as the other.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently I am a leadership coach. I live in the Midwest. I do a lot of different things with my life. I enjoy working with incarcerated individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So I am an adjunct professor for a local community college. I teach classes at the prison, really enjoy that. And then I work with a local nonprofit as well, helping incarcerated individuals get careers in the culinary industry. So I really, for some reason, is just being inside of a prison is just my vibe. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy working with these people. They're some of the most brilliant and honest and kind people that I've ever encountered in my life. And there's something about that atmosphere that there's just no pretense, I think is what it is. They're not
So,
trying to go
so
ahead.
tell me, you're working with hardened, violent criminals.
Oh, maybe. Honestly, I don't know their background.
All right. So, and you're telling me they're kind and compassionate. Now, the public would go, what? Now, what kind of prison are you working in? Is this high security, medium security? What is it?
The state penitentiary here in Nebraska, I believe they have, higher security areas and lower security areas. I believe it's a high, medium, and a low
Hmm.
area facility. The actual like maximum security facility would be in Tecumseh. So
Okay.
that's 45 minutes away from Lincoln where I'm at.
Okay.
Uh,
So that's where they keep the really bad guys.
I've not been there. I
Oh,
I've met a guy who teaches classes actually down there and does work down there too. So,
okay. So you said you like the atmosphere. What is it about the atmosphere you like?
well, as I said, I think it's just there's no pretense, right? They're not trying to impress you. They're not, I teach classes and they're not. I've taught classes, on the outside in schools and in a university and community colleges and things like that. And students are often earbuds in their ears, on their
Uh,
laptop in class.
Tell
They're
me about it.
checked out. They're not paying attention. They're just there, asses in the seat to get the grade, to get the degree, to go on to whatever's next. The students that I work with, they're there to learn. They show up, they have ideas, they've read the material. Like it shocks me that they actually read
Fancy
it.
that, Art.
Yeah,
They've actually read the assignment.
exactly. We have great discussions. Currently, I'm teaching a class on professional selling, and so all my students are incarcerated, and we talk a lot about selling things like drugs or cars or just it's life, it's real life, and we can talk about that stuff there. Whereas, in a college setting, feels like you have to act professional. When you're behind the prison walls, I mean, professionalism kind of, even that question of, because the class, it's called professional selling. The first day they said, what is professional selling? What does professional mean? And I said, you got me. I have no idea what that means. We're going to talk about how do you sell stuff, right? And it's much more about how do you build relationships with people rather than selling stuff.
Hmm.
It's all about relationships anyways.
So, how do you get these guys to accept you? Because I would imagine that they have what I call a very sensitive bullshit meter.
Absolutely.
Okay, how do you get their trust?
Well, I come from, I've never been in prison. I've been incarcerated in a variety of ways. I was actually just thinking about this the other day. Like the first time that I was incarcerated, if you use a strict definition of it, I was in eighth grade. I got arrested for selling pot at school in the eighth grade. And I was taken to the police station and I was put into a holding cell and I was in there for like 6 hours until my parents came to get me. And I was thinking about this for some reason earlier, like yesterday. I was like, when was the first time I actually experienced like being put in a cell and held against my will? I was in eighth grade. And it was only 6 hours. But for someone who's in eighth grade, you're what,
That's pretty
12?
doggone young, Art.
Yeah, 6 hours
I mean,
felt.
that says to me you are on the fast track to juvenile delinquency, young man.
Well, at that point, I was full blown juvenile delinquent, getting arrested at
Okay.
school, selling drugs. That was my first and only experience really selling drugs. After that, I clearly wasn't good at it, so I gave it up. But yeah, so I tell them a bit about my background. Gosh, I started using drugs when I was in fifth grade. By the ninth grade, I was using methamphetamines. I dropped out of high school. I was living on the streets at 14. I was homeless and in and out of juvenile facilities. I never, like I said, I've never been in actual prison, adult prison, but I spent quite a bit of time in and out of the juvenile facilities as a child. I actually was incarcerated in a juvenile facility for, I think it was 95 days total. That was the maximum amount they could give me because they let me out on my 18th birthday. And they handed me $2.50 and my property and said, "Here you go." And I got on the city bus and rode the bus home to my mom's house, which I ended up getting kicked out a few days later anyways. So I give them a brief, hey, I've been there, I've not been in prison, but I've been a drug addict and I've been homeless and I've been incarcerated in a variety of different settings and I've been in jail as an adult plenty of times, usually a couple of days here and there, never long stretches because honestly I hate it. And I grew up in California. The reason I left the state and came to Nebraska where I currently live is because I was going to end up either dead or in prison. And honestly, I hate being locked up and being dead sounded better to me. So I left the state. And a lot of my friends from back then ended up in prison, and some of them are actually dead. And so it wasn't a far-fetched that it was going to happen to me. And I got out because I
So when you left California, where did you go?
Nebraska, here in Nebraska, where I am
And
currently.
this is your home state. This is where you grew up, right?
No, my mom's family's from Nebraska. I was I lived in Kansas for I don't know until sixth grade, and then we moved out west. Lived in Arizona
Okay.
a little bit, and then mostly California, most of my life.
All right. Okay.
And
So they see in you um, a been there, done that sort of realism, and um, and you're not going to bullshit them because of that. Um,
I think so. I think it's also, what I appreciate about it without, it's just the lack of pretense, right? Like they're not there to impress me. I also don't have that in the classroom. I'm not there to convince them that I know everything or that I'm smarter than them or accomplished or that I'm right and they're wrong. I'm just there, honestly, I'm not one of them, right? Because I am the teacher and I do have to remain as the teacher in that role. It's a teacher-student relationship. We're not friends and that kind of stuff. But I treat them as people. Sometimes when I'm walking out of the facility, the COs and stuff at the front desk will be like, "Hey, how was your class? How's it going? Whatever." And I'll tell them, my students, they are craving human connection. And because they don't get it from the staff that work in the prison, right? They actually
mhm.
it breaks my heart how atrociously incarcerated individuals are treated by staff members in these facilities, and sometimes me too, just as a volunteer. Like I get treated that way sometimes. Like you're not a real person. Like you're just a piece of dirt, a piece of trash, a piece of shit. You're just an inconvenience to them, whatever it is. So they're craving human connection, and I get to go in there and I provide that for them. in teaching in the prison system is, I mean, the whole teaching handbook goes out the window. Like this is finals week. Today's actually our last class. And last week we had, quite a bit of snow here in Nebraska, and I get a
Oh,
I get a
yes.
message probably an hour before I'm supposed to leave my house to go to the prison to teach that there's no school today because the heat in the school building is not working. So we can't have school. It's an old the state prison here is, I don't know, 100 years old. It's super old. They're building a new one, which, there's a whole lot of shakeup about them building another prison. So, but it's an old building, so crap breaks all the time. There's no heat. We can't have school. And then Thursday, I was sick, so we missed a whole week of school. And now this is finals week. And so stuff just goes out like there's 3 or 4 assignments like, hey, we don't have time to do them. Because it's not like they can go home and hop on a computer and watch a Zoom recording, or, they can't make up work like that because they don't have access to technology. They get some lab time where they can go into the school and use a computer. But then I got a message on Monday that all of the computers and all of the facilities are being sent to somewhere for some IT upgrades. So they can't even get on computers this week either. So there's no way for them to do any of these assignments that should have, like, there's a final exam and a paper due, and it just all goes out the window. Due dates don't exist within prison teaching because places get locked down, students get put in solitary, they can't come to class. It's so much out of their control that essentially, having what I would say is like a punitive consequence attached to that when it's not in their control. I had one
Hmm.
student, the COs took his textbook early in the term and he has no idea where it went, right? They went into his cell and they tossed it and they took his textbook. And what's he supposed to do about that, right? And we've asked, the school has asked the facility, hey, this textbook, they said you guys took it, where is it? And it's just never come back. And so it's
It
an
went into
interesting
it went
experience
into that
overall.
dark hole to which all things government go, usually,
Yeah.
wherever that is. So, how long have you been teaching in the prisons?
Currently, this adjunct role that I'm in, the last year, I started in January of this year, and this is the last day of winter term, and I'm taking next spring term off. And my wife and I are having a baby in, May-ish, so I don't want to, if our kid comes a month early, I wouldn't be able to finish the term. So taking off the next term and then probably summer too, because we're gonna have a baby. So I won't be teaching again until probably the fall of next year, but I've been doing it all of this year. So twice a week, spring, summer, and now fall term.
So is this your first child?
No, no, I have older children. My oldest lives out in California.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then my middle child lives in Arizona with her mom. And then my wife and I have a toddler. And then we're having another one. So four,
Congratulations.
four for me.
Okay. All right. You look like a happy dad there. Um, um,
Tired, tired.
oh, just wait till the baby comes. You think you're tired now. Um, the you're back to sleep. You'll be back to sleepless nights again. Um, I am so glad I am past that. Let me tell you. I have 3 grown daughters, and I do remember those times. My oldest, she there were times that a couple of times that she would wake up in the night and simply could not be comforted, and the only thing that would work was putting her in the back of the car and driving around the neighborhood, literally, and then she would go to sleep. And that's when we were living in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, and we lived in a nice suburban community that was very mindful of cars wandering around the streets at 2:33 in the morning. And so on this one evening, the policeman pulled me over, and he came up and I said, and he looked and he said, "Oh, okay. Have a nice evening, sir." And he just left, and I was able to go. So
That's a great story.
it is. I mean, and nothing would that it'd be 1 or 2 times that nothing but that would soothe her. I don't know what it
Mhm.
is about riding around in a car in the middle of the night. Um, and and it was winter, so the car was toasty. Had to get it nice and toasty for her.
Mhm.
So I was like, so anyway, so This edge of chaos thing, where did that phrase come from?
Yeah. The edge of chaos is actually a concept from complexity science, which is like way high. People who are much smarter than me actually understand what this is about. But its origins are in like cybernetics and computer systems and how complex systems work with one another. And the
Hmm.
edge of chaos is this idea that a complex system is most adaptive and creative and resilient, not when it's completely stable or when it's in complete chaos. So when there's too much stability, a system will stagnate, which is why, animals in a zoo lay around all day and don't do anything because it's too much stability for them. They get 3 meals a day fed to them, they get toys to play with, it's such a predictable life.
What a boring existence.
Well, for a wild animal, right?
Yeah, what a
Yeah,
boring existence.
exactly.
Um,
So they lay
um,
out, they stagnate, right? And then too much chaos, absolute chaos, right? The system just collapses. And so either way, if there's too much stability, it eventually will lead to death. The system will die. It'll stagnate. It won't grow. If there's too much chaos, it will collapse. And so both sides of that are actually bad for a system. So the edge of chaos is this space between stability and complete chaos where you are thriving, you're growing, you are adaptive and resilient and able to overcome whatever life throws at you.
mhm.
And and this is it sums up my life experience because I've lived in utter chaos where everything just collapses. I've been on the streets and I've been in and out of jail and just losing you get a job and it's gone the next week. You get a place to live and it's gone the next day. Just absolute utter madness type stuff. I've been
Mhm.
there. And there's no way to live that way. Like it leads to death. It really does, which is why I said I left California because I was going to end up dead or in jail. And I've also like when I got sober, which was 2014, end of 2014, I thought stability was the thing, right? Like I'm gonna go to school and I'm gonna get a job and I'm gonna do all the things that our life, our culture, whoever is out there that kind of society says, get the degree, get the job, get the car, the house, the family, save up money, like do all of that stuff so that you're stable. And I aspired to that for many years and realized that shit'll kill me too.
That's
So
what
you gotta go ahead.
you said. That's something too.
I
I
said
didn't.
that shit will kill me too.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. Too much stability will, I'll lose my mind. I will, because I just can't, I need, and so I don't need complete chaos. I don't need to completely blow up my entire life, which I'm more than capable of doing, right? When I get that old sense of feelings coming back up like I used to have back in the day, and I want to punch a hole in a wall or light something on fire and just literally cause some chaos. That is usually what landed me in jail back then. So I don't
Let
do
me let me ask you a question about that. You see, and I'm this is an honest question because you
absolutely.
and I are very different. Um, but I know guys like you. All
Yeah.
right. I'm thinking of one in particular.
Mhm.
And what is it that would motivate you just to do something crazy? I'm going to go out and just punch a hole in that wall, or I'm going to wreck this car, or I want to start that thing on fire, or I mean, I presume you weren't just always starting fistfights. I'm going to stay but probably you were in some of those. Um, so, what was it? Was it the desire to be different? Was it the desire just to raise hell? Was it frustration? What was going on, Art?
It's all of the above, even recently, I told you my wife and I are moving and
Yes.
not by choice. I mean, it is at some level by choice. We are choosing to move, but we are moving because of the landlord wanting to increase our rent by like $600 a month, which we can't afford. So essentially being forced out, right? So it
Hmm.
is our choice not to stay here
Oh,
and
I
try
get it.
to up the
You're,
money. We
you're
are being,
avoiding bankruptcy by changing your residence. There you
yeah.
go.
So, but it feels very much like we're being forced out. And the
Because it's not of your, you wouldn't have done it otherwise. You were happy where you were otherwise. Okay.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of emotions attached to us. Our daughter is almost 2, and this is her home. This is all she's ever known, right? And so there's some
Hmm.
grief around that. Like this is her home. Like she's lived her entire life. She doesn't know anything, and it's not anything that she has done that has caused this. So she doesn't know what's happened. It's just very sad. But then there's the anger of it. Like the landlord knows we can't afford that. Like what are you doing? And there's no conversation about it. It's just here's the thing. Here's what's happening. And so the feelings that come up for me in this, I was talking to my coach about this, and she says to me, "Well, what do you want to do with that?" I said, "What do I want to do?" I said, "I want to burn the fucking house down. That's what I want to do." Because it's like, oh, like you want to force us out of the house? Like you're mad at me for something? Like I'll give you something to actually be angry about. Because in our estimation, in our perception of it all, we didn't do anything to warrant this. You know what I mean? Like we didn't do anything to deserve this treatment. And there's not been an explanation behind it as to, the economy or taxes or anything. It was just, hey, the rent's going to be this
X.
month starting January. And it wasn't we were told this like 3 weeks ago too. January 1, it's going to be this, it's $600 more than it was. I'm like, shit, you could have told us, like, give us some time, something. But it was just so my immediate response, just for some reason, this visceral experience of how I've lived life is, oh, I'm gonna give you something, a reason. I'm gonna burn the house down, right? I'm gonna, you don't want us to have it, you ain't gonna have it, right? But that ends up with me suffering and my family suffering and me being in jail.
Hmm.
So I
So you're,
don't know exactly what it is that stirs that up.
but
It's
you've
a pretty
got to the
complex
point
thing.
that you can pull yourself back from that and make a rational decision
Yeah,
uh, that's more long term than providing you the immediate gratification of sticking it to him. Then the idea is, okay, well, now let's look at this more longer term. What's this going to do for me? So it's the ability to think more strategically than impulsively. Um, um,
yeah, and that's essentially where this edge of chaos comes in because that's chaos, burning the house down.
yeah, I'd say
Stability,
that. Hmm.
yeah. And so stability is when I feel, and maybe that response is because I feel some sense of instability by being forced out of this home, right? Like, oh,
Oh,
and
of course you do. It's something that just kind of landed in your lap, totally unwelcome and unexpected, and it's with you, but yet you have to deal with it,
absolutely,
and you've chosen to deal with it in a productive manner. Um, I would like to think that being married has something to do with that. You feel, and you have children at home, so you feel that protective parental desire, and to provide for your wife and your family and all these kind of things, very normal masculine things to do. Um, Also normal masculine things is to raise hell sometimes, and look at that smile on your face. You are one more hellraiser. I can just tell that right now. You know, see,
love to break shit, man.
uh, now I have a, well, he's deceased now, but for many years he was a very, very good friend, and he was a lot like you, and he and I were very, very different, but we respected one another, um, and I'm the original Sunday school boy, like Art. Okay, I never did. I was such a good boy. Okay, now now that I'm my age, I'm thinking, why didn't I do a little more hell raising when I was young? But I was just like I was the doobie. You would have probably said, "Oh, who is that creep over there?" I mean, so I was the doobie all the time. But guess what? Secretly, I was envious of you guys because there was something about you. Wow, this guy's really enjoying stuff, And now, fortunately, you kept it from going completely out of control, and that's where you end up in prison, addicted, dead, all these other things that are not very positive outcomes. You were able to restrain that back in. So, what was it that enabled you to do that?
Restrain is maybe not the correct term because I was addicted. I was addicted to drugs for 15 years, and I was homeless off and on for most of that time too. And
Mm-hmm. But at
addiction,
some point, you made a change.
yeah, and this is my experience, and I imagine most people who used drugs don't want to use drugs, especially, I was using methamphetamine and putting needles in my arm type of using
Ugh,
drugs, right?
well, that's
I
dead.
imagine people in that situation don't go about their day and say, yeah, this is the life I wanted, right? At some level, I knew like doing drugs is something I don't want to do. It's bad for me. I have this idea of a different life that I should live. I just don't know how to get there.
I
So,
don't know how to get there. That's the
absolutely,
phrase right there. What do I do? How do I make this change? How do I,
yeah,
what's that first step? And the irony of it is that's what you're enabling these prisoners to do if they'll take you up on it.
yeah, absolutely. I get to go in and be a symbol that life can be different. It can. But
Mm-hmm.
also, I do try to share as much as I can. As I said, I have to remain as the teacher in the role. Some of it's like similar to what I shared here, that the old me still exists, right? That person's there. The guy who wants to burn the house down is still there, right? So yeah, you change and you can make different decisions, but you as a person, and it doesn't mean anything about him, doesn't make me a bad person that I want to burn the house down. I mean, as you just said, uh, you were envious of the bad boys, and I firmly
Mm-hmm.
believe this is why people love to hear my story, that everybody's wants to know what that feeling's like to take a match and throw it on a pile and walk away and just be like, ooh, like what is that like, right? To get into this fight, like to actually experience, people want to experience that. They're afraid of it, obviously, because they don't go out and start fistfights.
Right.
But they like people like me. They like to hear my story because it gives them a glimpse into this other side of life that they secretly want to experience, but obviously don't want to burn their houses down because nobody really wants to experience that.
Not
Some
really.
people,
At
yeah,
least the
not really.
results.
But setting a match to something and walking away is it's enticing, it's intriguing. That's why people are fat. What's the number one thing people listen to on podcasts, right? It's like true crime and serial killers. People are enamored with the dark side of life
Mm-hmm.
because it's part of who they are, but they don't want to acknowledge it. So they want to listen to how other people engage in the dark side. And so, I don't pretend it's not there when I talk to my students, like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
who you are and what you've done in life is, they always ask, is someone going to actually hire me with my background? Are people going to want to work with me when they find out that I've been in prison? And I tell them they're going to want to work with you more, probably. And if they don't, you don't want to work with them, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Because if somebody's going to judge you based on that, you don't want their business. You don't want to work with them. It's off. I've led with that in job interviews. Well, tell us about yourself. Well, I was homeless and addicted to drugs for 15 years of my life, but let me tell you what it taught me, right? Because I learned a lot of shit living on the streets that you can't
Well,
learn in an MBA program. Let
well,
me tell you, because
that's
I've done
quite
that
the
too.
that's quite the opening.
Yeah,
Um, and here's what that does. I suspect, no, I know that will disarm most people because they're not expecting that from you. If they're expecting anything at all, it's sort of a gloss over and a strong defense on why that's irrelevant. Instead of embracing the experience that you've had and using that as a constructive step forward. There is a difference, you
absolutely.
see. And, if a man would come to me like you do, I mean, I'd be very, I'd be really, really, what's the word, attracted to learning more about, well, why, and tell me what you can do for me. What do you want to do in life? What I do is I work with philanthropists primarily, and above a certain level, they don't need another thing. All right. They can buy the things they want. They want something that's far more elusive, personal self fulfillment.
Mhm.
And philanthropy is a way that they can do that if they happen to be engaged by the right organization. So many organizations, they treat them like ATMs or bank accounts, and that just frustrates them more. But so I will, when I was working on the institutional side, not the coaching side, I would ask someone, Art, I'd say, so Art, what is it you really want to accomplish in life? And these people are already successful financially, monetarily. By the way, was it like 80 or 90% of all the millionaires and billionaires in this country are self made? It does not come from inherited wealth. It does not. There are a few, but not that many. So it's by their own effort that they've achieved this. And oftentimes that's when you begin to hear the things that are really important to them. Yeah, I made all this money, but here's what really is something that's on my heart I'd like to share with you. And if you can give them that in whatever form that it might take, um, money's no object, Art, with these people. Money is no object because it's not about the money. See,
Mhm.
it's really not about the money. And with you, it's not about all the damn credentials. It's about your life experience. It's about what you've done and what you're going to do with that.
Mhm.
You see, it's before we started recording, I mentioned to you Charlie Munger, who was, as you know, Berkshire Hathaway coach and co-founder and friend of Warren Buffett. He had a very difficult life early, and he had an opportunity. He could have either gone down a rabbit hole and died early from all of his bad experiences, or just endure and keep going and see what happens. And he was a bright man, and he had some opportunities, and he took the most of those. See, that's what you've done, my friend. You've had some issues. Well, okay. I actually respect you more for having endured this and come out of this on the other side. You know, and this, I don't know you that well, but here's what I'm thinking. You're the kind of man I can trust. You're a man I can trust because I don't think you're going to bullshit me. Um, um, and you don't really need me for your life. Okay. And so that right there gets my attention. You know, what is it that would motivate you to be, if I were hiring you for a job, what would motivate you? And then of course I'd ask you, what is it that brings you satisfaction? What is it that brings you fulfillment? Um, and so now you did the TEDx talk, you're doing the teaching. Um, what the hell next, Art?
Yeah. So I've spent the last almost year of my life engaged in a coach training program, and I've been a coach for about 5 years. And as you mentioned earlier, is when you're young, it's about honing your craft and your skills. So I'm working on you know building my coaching skills and building my own coaching business. That's what's next. That's what the next year holds for me. Uh,
Okay.
I do a lot of work, working at the community college as an adjunct. I work for a local nonprofit, running their program and supporting incarcerated individuals. My vision for the next year, what I'm working on is I'm going to work for myself and building my own coaching business and working with, as you said, people who kind of need that person who is going to give them the truth, not bullshit them. There's a lot of coaches out there you can hire, and they'll tell you what you want to hear. Uh, I'm the guy who's going to tell you, wake up. Why the hell not? Right? Anything could be possible for your life. The dream that you actually have that's behind the other things you're talking about is achievable. I mean, and part of that's about my own experience, right? Look at me, right? Like I used to be homeless, I used to be a drug addict, and I get to do so many amazing things with my life. That is true of anybody.
Well,
People have
but
the capacity for greatness.
but you'd also be very candid and truthful. For instance, you probably say to me, Larry, I know you got the desire, but I just don't see professional wrestling in your future. Yeah, and okay. Are you familiar with the film Chariots of Fire?
Very familiar with it. I've not seen it. Not.
Well, do you know the story?
Oh, it
It's a tr-
alludes to
well, it's a true story. It's a true
1980s
story,
Olympics,
and it's
right?
about two young men who compete in the 24 Olympics, and both are runners. One comes from a privileged background. He's Jewish. One comes from a Scottish background, very intensely religious, faith based, um, and the faith based guy, Eric Little, is actually he's a long distance runner, and he's probably at that time the fastest man in the world, and Abrams, the Jewish man, is more of a sprinter, and there's this sort of dynamic that's put up between them. But Abrams desperately wants to be Little. He desperately and Little he's lost a Little several times. Well, there's this one scene just close to the Olympics because they're both going to go to the Olympics and represent Britain. And he has a meeting in a pub with this professional coach, a man by the name of Massambini, and he's saying to him, will you help me? And of course, first Massambini says, well, I don't know about you, but in my world, it's the groom that asks the bride. All right, mean to work with him. And he said, but okay. He said, I'll look at you. I'll see what you've got. But I must warn you, I cannot put in what God left out. And I think that is a wonderful phrase. Well,
Mhm.
God did not bless me with athleticism. All right. I've come to terms with that, but I'm still pretty fit for my age, and that's that I can do. But so, yeah, you're the kind of guy who would say, I just don't see that in your future. But you've got other skills over here. You've got other things we can do, you know. Um, and see, you've got this grin. You've got like, yeah, I know, I've been there, I've done that. Yeah, yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you?
I do, yeah, yeah. I've done a bit of career coaching in my coaching career. I spent about a good year working for a corporation doing career coaching, and yeah, sometimes yeah, you get to talking to people. What would you like to do? What do you think? What kind of money do you want to earn? And they start giving you a list of things, and you're just like, okay, yeah, maybe not this year, right? Uh, I remember very vividly having a conversation with a young man, and I said, "What's the end goal? What's the job title you want?" And he said, "A CTO, Chief Technology Officer," because
Mm.
he getting into this was an introductory like tech certification program, and I said, tell me about that. Like he said, I love working with my hands and I love technology. And I said, do you know what C-suite people do all day? And he said, no. I said, they have meetings all day. The CTO is not working with his hands. He's not touching technology probably at all, right? He has assistants who actually probably handle his own
Mm-hmm.
personal technology. And so he just and as I laid that out for him, he kind of changed. Well, I don't want to do that, right? No, I
No,
don't maybe
no,
most C-suite level people probably don't want to do that because
no,
it's a lot of meetings, right? And it's a lot of stress, and it's actually not what you think it is. And so,
no.
what do you really want? What's the desire behind that, right? Like, if you told me wrestling, I'd say, yeah. Tell me about it. Like, what about wrestling gets you excited? And let's find something else that has that same excitement for you. Because if
Like
it's
smashing the guy's head into the mat. That's what gets me excited.
okay. All right. Well, you don't have to be a wrestler to get into a physical altercation with somebody. I mean, there's a boxing gym probably closer to you,
Yeah,
right?
there is.
There's other ways to fulfill this.
See, I like that about you. I really do. I spent most of my fundraising institutional career in higher ed, and two little stories. I worked with the gentleman as a donor who was at that time the group vice president of General Motors that ran Chevrolet. And I don't know what you know about the auto industry, but it's a pretty no holes barred, rough and tumble industry. It's cleaned up a little bit, but not that much. And so he and his wife endowed a scholarship at the university, and he wanted to meet the students that his scholarship had benefited. And I remember first taking him the resumes and the photographs of the ones that had been selected, And he sat there and in his office in Detroit, and it just tears came to his eyes. Art. This is a rough and tumble auto guy, you know, and the kind that tells you don't let the door hit you on the way out, that kind of guy. And he says, "Well, I want to take this home." And he mentioned his wife's name and show this to her. Well, then he came to campus, and these kids, these engineering students, oh wow, the CEO is going to sit here and have lunch with us, and blah 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 blah. Well, they got a chance to ask questions, and one of them said to him, "Mr. McClernand, how do you get to be CEO?" All right. He gave them an incredible answer, Art. He said, "Here's how." He said, "You take every job that you're given and you do the very, very best you can. And then when the next one comes along, you do that. And sooner or later, it will happen. Not out here, it's one step at a time, your very best effort. Boom, 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 boom." And I thought to myself, well, I hope these kids know the advice they just got, how valuable it is. I hope they understand what he just told them.
Wow.
Because that's not the popular perception, as you might imagine, you know. Um, and then at one point I was I had 4 vice presidencies. At one college I was vice president for advancement, and I met with the student council when I was first appointed, and this young man puts his hand up and he said, "Well, Mr. Johnson, I know you're a vice president, but what is it that you do?" What do you actually do? In other words, how do I spend my day? And I told them essentially what you said in a lot of meetings. That's sort of what I do. You
Yeah.
know, I'm not out there on the front lines doing that much. I do some, but and that was kind of a you know, because somehow they don't see you in that light. You know that your
Right.
life is so terribly boring. This is what I do. So, anyway, uh, Art, this has been delightful. Now, I'm going to challenge you. I think one of your next steps is to write a book.
Yeah, it's on my list of things I'm planning to do.
All right.
One,
I
I'm
want you. Okay, I want you to write a book, and when you start talking about that, let's talk again. Okay, and then when you actually write it, let's talk again. All
absolutely.
right. I want to follow you and what you're doing. Um, God bless you, my friend. Um, you know, now how old are you?
I'm gonna be 40 in about 3 weeks.
You said that like you were about ready to get a sentence. Believe me, 40 is when you start living, Art. Let me tell you, 40 is when you start living. Um, and so congratulations on your upcoming birth with
Thank you.
you, and and I know you're moving. So, and do you have a place you're going at?
Yes, yes. Since this was short notice, thankfully there's a couple from our church that's gonna let us live in their basement for the foreseeable future. We're planning on buying a house in the next 3 to 6 months. So
Okay, well, I certainly hope the house. Let's hope the housing market and the rent and the mortgage market improves.
yeah,
As a quarter point decline. 25 points came down yesterday and so we'll just see what that does for you over time. And let me give you a little that will make you feel better. All right, maybe. I bought my first house in 1984. All right, that was during the Carter years when there was so much. Well, actually, it was the result of the Carter years from all the high interest rates. I had a quote buy down where the bond would buy the rate down to 12%. Okay, so I don't get real excited with some of my very young friends that are whining about 7. Now I understand that the prices have inflated quite a bit.
yeah,
And I get that. Okay. I mean, that house I had and what I paid for it in 1984 has more or less quintupled in price.
I bet.
Okay. Uh, but still, that first mortgage, of course, we refinanced as soon as we could. But so there's hope. That's what I wanted to say. There's hope.
Absolutely. I'm
So,
hopeful.
yes. All right. Thank you, Art. for being here. I want to thank our guests and our audience. Um, if they wanted to reach out to you, where would they go to reach out to you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Art Wilson. You can email me, art@artwilson.com. And hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'll have my website up, artwilson.com.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, Art.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right, people. Enjoy. We'll do another one of these next week. And now you know how to reach this young man. He's going places. Thank you very much.